Fig fam! Phil's Fig Fridays coming at you. Thanks for joining me. Let's go check out the greenhouse. Last week I had it retrofitted for a total cold snap that came through. And now, short sleeves. It's 70 degrees out. So today I wanted to answer a question: how are my fig cuttings doing? And I want to give you a progress update of how my fig cuttings are going, if I've lost any fig cuttings, and if my fig cuttings are doing really well, and what to look for. So let's go in here and I'll show you some examples of what I look for in the success of my fig cuttings. "76 degrees. Cuttings are waking up. All really good signs. Right here, and not so much right here. So I started my fig cuttings a little later this year. I had a big cutting sale going on. I had family stuff going on. And the earliest set of cuttings I have here are probably from around Christmas time that I put them in. So we're starting to look at the 3 to 4 week marker. And oftentimes what I'm really looking for is root growth, which you cannot necessarily see in my setup. How I test for root growth on a very simple level is I do a light tug of my cuttings. If I feel give, that means there isn't much root development going on. You can do this easily with one of these newer cuttings, my long du. I can feel in here there's give. That give, now it doesn't look like much, but that up and down give just indicates that there hasn't been any or very little root development. And what I'll actually do is, if you can look, this is about 50-50 coconut coir and 50-50 perlite. I tend just to push it down, and I may mist it if I feel that it's like completely dry. I can still tell that there's some moisture in here, and I rooted this one last week, so it has a lot of time to go, but that's how I test. If you take something that, for me, has put out some growth, right here, I have this white Triana. This one is about 3 weeks now. You can see it pushed out its first set of leaves, and that's firm, guys. So that's a good test, and you'll know when you feel. And the last thing you want to disturb are those new baby roots. This is a baby. Treat it like a baby, care for it like a baby, baby everything about it. If you water it, baby the watering. If you warm it, baby the warmth. Keep it in that nice Goldilocks zone environment, right? These are our fig babies. In fact, I really like to have them well rooted in these 3x8 pots before transplanting them. From experience, I can tell you I've lost a lot of baby figs by myself getting excited and up potting them too soon, and they actually get stressed and they will die. Not all figs are like this. Celeste's, Hardy Chicago's, some of the other varieties that are more popular are actually quite resilient. Some of these rare varieties that make excellent fruit are a little more finicky, a little bit more of a diva, and they will get stressed. So if you see success, keep going with the pattern of treatment you've been doing. Try not to change anything, regardless of how excited you get. But embrace the excitement. I have rooted well over 1,000 cuttings, and I get the same feeling every time. And in fact, seeing these kind of numbers and seeing the success that's happening, it gets even more exciting every year. So it's a really fun process if you like working with your hands. But this one, hard tug, I can tell there's roots. I'm not going to do anything to the bottom. Sometimes when they're really mature, again, this is only about a month now, maybe a little less. I would say about 3 weeks to 4 weeks. But about the 2-month mark, you may see roots coming out the bottom. Another good sign is a slightly slower development of leaf growth. And what I mean by that is a lot of these take a few weeks before their buds even push out and start to do green growth. So let's take this Smith, for example. I rooted this one over 2 weeks ago, and if you look closely, it's just starting to put out these buds now. That is totally okay with me. In fact, I like it that it waits a few weeks. Sometimes if you introduce a very humid environment, like really humid, it might be over encouraging for these cuttings to put out leaf growth. And what happens is they put out leaf growth before they put out root growth. They are not dedicating enough energy to root development. After they put out leaf growth, they go to reach for nutrients from the roots and they have no reservoir there. So a delayed set of leaves after a few weeks, and then I start to see the buds jumping, means that it dedicated some time to making its roots first. And that is a really good green light for me. This is an air layer. This is different than cuttings. These air layers already had roots in them, and how I potted them is I put them in potting mix already. And so I treated it like it was its own plant, but dormant. It was able to get a head start, take the roots it was already given, and run with them here in the greenhouse, allowing for figs to wake up and grow. I do want to have trees ready for sale by April. That's really important to me as a small nursery. I want to get a head start. So when plant sales open up, everybody can get their fig home and ready to grow. In my earlier intro clip, I showed the progress of a lot of the figs in this tray. This Marseille Black VS has a fig already growing on it. I have not removed the fig. I have let the fig do its thing. I can tell there's roots in there. The reason I leave the fig on is because these cells that are awake on this green fig can still photosynthesize energy. So it's really important. This is another babying thing, is don't be alarmed if it pushes out a fig. It can still photosynthesize with this plant material that it's grown. So I'm letting it just exist there. I'm letting it wake up slowly. I'm being very accepting of whatever it tries to produce without getting too hung up on, oh no, it's a fig. I don't want it to invest energy in fruiting. Don't worry, it won't. It decides on whether to ripen the fruit later on in the year. So right now, let it set some fruit. It can still photosynthesize with light. It has nice tight root system. I can feel it. And it's even starting to push out leaf growth now. So again, we're babying our figs. We're letting them do their thing. Not all figs are created equal. Not all figs will behave equally. Not all fig cuttings, even if it's the same variety, will behave equally as well. For example, this Marseille Black and this Marseille Black were planted at the same time. They look like they're about 2 weeks apart. It just so happened that this one broke out early. It got really happy and excited. It accepted the climate that it was in to grow. This one needed a little more time. Still very early on the process. I just don't want people to get overexcited or overzealous when they find that some of their fig cuttings aren't doing anything. Same variety, same plant actually, same amount of time, and right next to each other, but still at different stages, and I am not worried about it. I've had fig cuttings take upwards of 2-3 months just to root. They don't rot because they're in a safe environment, but it takes a really long time. This one, I really feel like it has barely any roots. This, on the other hand, definitely has roots just by tugging it. Size doesn't always matter in cuttings, but more of the health of the cutting itself. I don't know if you can see here, but this cutting that's starting to break out and leaf is only about 2.5 inches long. It does have a few nodes, but it came from a really healthy tree. And then you have big cuttings like this. The larger the cutting, the more resilient the cutting is when rooting. That is if it comes from a healthy tree. This cutting right here has been rooted for about twice as long as this small cutting, and it is still waiting to sprout. If you look really close, you can see a little green dot right at the top of the node there. That is a great sign, but bigger cuttings move slower. They are more resilient, they're more likely to be successful. They just move slower compared to some of the thinner, smaller cuttings. But yet sometimes thinner, smaller cuttings can be a little volatile. When I say thinner, smaller, I mean smaller than pencil thickness. When I think of big cuttings, I think over 1/2 inch thick. Now, with the good, sometimes comes the bad. I was really excited for this cutting, And I came out this morning and it is drooping. Not completely, but also it wasn't looking as spry as it was looking a few days ago. Now, this could be due to a few reasons. The roots may not have grown, but it feels like there might be roots in there. It also looks like it may be too wet in the soil. Now, feeling it, it doesn't feel that bad. So I'm really not sure what's going on here. I have two other cuttings like this. Normally, I wouldn't want to disrupt it. I would want to just baby it, nurse it. It was doing well for so long, and maybe I overwatered it, and maybe I got a little stressed. Maybe there might be some rot underneath. Regardless, so you guys don't have to dig up your cuttings. I'm going to dig up mine, and we'll take a look at what's going on under the hood of the pot. If you are new to rooting fig cuttings, I would advise, and I know that some of my followers and subscribers do this, is they use clear solo cups. So when they're rooting cuttings, they can look for root development without actually disturbing the fig cutting itself. I grow these in these 4x9 Stew & Sons pots, so I can sell them at market, and I'll fertilize them as they grow in this tree pot, as to not disrupt the root ball in these cuttings. If I'm using these smaller tree pots, I will actually up pot them into 1 gallon pots. So I have my rooting mix here. Let's take a look under the hood. Again, I don't recommend doing this. It can stress the fig cutting out a lot. But why it's drooping, I'm not sure. But this is about 3 weeks in. I used Clonex, and we can see there is root development here, guys. I don't see a lot of rot as I scrape around here. I see everywhere I scored up the side, I've gotten roots. So this is about a 3 to 4 week cutting. It may have been used to humid temperatures when I had the extra greenhouse layer on top of greenhouse fabric. It got really humid in here, and it may have either stressed it or it actually appreciated it. And so when I changed the climate to a slightly drier, now it's still well over 50% humidity in here, it may have stressed this a little bit. These Celeste cuttings can root and live in just about anything. I don't have to worry about it. Newer varieties, you never know. You have to baby them, and it might be a good sign as if it's a fig you actually want to grow in the future. I'm excited. This is an experimental variety I picked up from Off the Beaten Path Nurseries. I've referred to him before. Bill up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Awesome, awesome guy. He's inspired me to get into figs. But as I see here, I see roots. A lot of these are primary roots. This is a really good sign that it could have been a little stressed and it might recover. What I'm going to do is I'm going to repot it in the pot. I'm going to give it a nice drink of water with these newly formed roots. Wow, that looked really good. So I'm not quite sure why it looks stressed and kind of floppy. It was in a healthy climate. But this brings me to another good point. Fig cuttings are a numbers game. I've had some cuttings from the same tree, one produce a ton of roots, like tons, and be wildly successful with his own tree in 2 months. And then the other cutting just didn't do anything at all. It shriveled up and passed away. There's a plethora of reasons why, but here's what I say to you if you're growing fig cuttings, is that it's a numbers game. So work on some hardier varieties, Brown Turkey, Celeste, Hardy Chicago, Mount Etna varieties that root quite well, that you can rely on, you can practice with, find mediums that go well. Again, I use 50-50 coconut coir and perlite. You can do 50-50 peat, but what I would recommend with peat is that it's quite acidic. So I would cut it with powdered calcium carbonate or garden lime. And that is 2 tablespoons to every gallon of peat used. That way, it'll bring the pH up from in the high 4s all the way up into the 6s, hopefully by gallon. If you want to add a little more, go for it. It's calcium carbonate, it's chalk, it is just rock. So mix it in well. It might get a little cementy, so make sure it's mixed in with the peat. And then after that's all mixed together, cut it with a bunch of perlite to add that nice drainage. You want to be able to squeeze the mixture and not have any water come out, but have it still be damp at the same time. So that's a good feel thing for when you're making your rooting mix for your fig cuttings. I've went ahead and I've rinsed it. You can see it dripping out. See how well draining this stuff is? I love coconut coir. I love it over peat, I really do. And it's sustainable. It comes from the fibers from a coconut. And so if you're always growing coconuts, the last thing I can think of this detective solving mystery of why this fig cutting isn't doing well is that it may have been too dry. It may have put out roots and now it is looking for moisture. So let's tune back in. I'll let you guys know how it's doing on Instagram. It's one of my earliest fig cuttings of the year, but this is not a great sign. But again, it's a numbers game. Directly next to it is this Norella. So it has been growing in the same exact conditions and it is flourishing and it definitely has roots and I'm really excited for it. But again, fig cuttings, it's a numbers game, guys. So be kind to yourself, give yourself gratitude and have fun with it. Start with a bunch of cuttings, start with easy varieties. And if you want to treat yourself to a few difficult ones, please do. And if you're worried about not rooting those, I will have plenty of fig trees this spring. And also reach out to me with any questions. I'm happy to work with you on this stuff. The fig community is a very supportive community. If you do not get your questions answered by me, reach out to anyone that grows figs. Reach out to anyone that gardens. Make it a collaborative community of gardening. That's why I do all the podcasts, the posts, to engage with you guys, to help everyone grow fig trees, to help everyone garden better. So if you really like what's going on here at Phil's Figs, reach out, subscribe, like, and contact me with any questions. I'm happy to help you garden. All right, take care, guys.